Hello, welcome to the Curator Podcast. This is episode 27. Hi, hello, welcome once again, dear listener, to the Curator Podcast. I am your host, Mark Fraser, and this is episode number 27. On this episode, I have for you, rapper, general all-round awesome guy, Astronautalis. I've had a few rappers on this show before, and you guys have probably realised by now that I quite like hip-hop. I first came across this guy on a POS track called The Brave and the Snake, which is the last track on his album Never Better, and I thought, fuck, this guy's really, really good. He has a really interesting sort of lyrical style, a really interesting sort of narrative flow and sort of delivery, which I really enjoyed. I had never seen him in Glasgow before, which was interesting for me. It turns out that when I did interview him, it was the first time he'd been in Glasgow, and only the second time he'd actually been in Scotland, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, it was a real honour to talk to the guy. As you'll find out very, very shortly, he is a huge Scottish history buff. He's actually named Andy Hepburn, or Andrew Hepburn, and he's somewhat related, distantly related, to James Hepburn, who is the 4th Earl of Bothwell, who is Mary Queen of Scots' third husband. Now, I don't want to hit you with a history lesson, but Scottish history is something that I'm hugely interested in, because I did my degree in Scottish literature. So, you know, literature and history are quite closely entwined, especially in the pre-Union era. It's explained a little bit in the podcast, but Mary Queen of Scots' third husband, the Earl of Bothwell, he was very, very well known for being a womaniser, but not only that, he was also extremely well known for being the person that Mary Queen of Scots blew up her second husband, Lord Darnley, for. And she later got her head chopped off. I mean, if you're a Scot, you know that happened because some letters were found and some sonnets were found that basically indicted her in the eyes of Queen Elizabeth I. So yeah, basically what happened was she was captured and she was put in prison, and she later got her head chopped off for plotting to overthrow the government. Now, what's interesting about this and how this all relates to Andy Hepburn is and how this all relates to Astronautalis even, is that the sonnets Mary Queen of Scots wrote actually professed her love for James Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell. So it was really interesting, and when you listen to the podcast, it starts off basically with a huge geek out about Scottish history, which I think is quite cool. I mean, he's a really fucking nice guy, super intelligent, and just a great rapper, and he puts on a fucking good show as well, man. He was playing with a live band, so that was really cool, really interesting to watch. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this episode. I'm going to open up with a song from his second album, Pomegranate, and this is called The Wondersmith and His Sons.
I am a soldier, baby, who works just like a slave, sweating through the pain and digging his foxhole that he knows is just a grave. You trust me, don't you, baby? Yeah, you'd hand your life to me. Let's walk along the wire and watch the muzzles flash like lightning. A smile safe crackers understand is rendering their steady hand obsolete. You thought you caught my sleight of hand, but you could never understand. No, not me. Father was a charming man with much hidden up his sleeve. I wonder if this is what he planned when he taught his tricks to me. The youngest was a clever boy, cracking calculus by 3. The eldest was a practical and obsessively clean. Then there was me. I was born a charming man with silver tongue, pearl teeth. That's never how it's supposed to end. We promised all we'd dream. The envy of the everyman. Our family seemed complete. Our father was a charming man. Our mother a serene. But now I'm on the run again. This soldier's home to me. They found the eldest skeleton face down in the stream. The youngest was still tucked in bed. The way they thought he was asleep. They moved the mirror from his mouth. The fog that should remain was not to be seen. Not to be seen. I am the dark yeah, you'd hand your life to me. Let's set this barn on fire and watch the flames eat up the roof leaves. A smile safe crackers understand is rendering this steady hand obsolete. You thought I must have broken in, but there's no crime in coming in. They hand me the key, floating on the wind again, on the tail of my quarry. And a woman weak for charming men who's holding what I need. She'll leave her window cracked for me, and I'll draft in like a breeze. My father was a charming man, and I learned it all from him. The brothers born a wondersmith, we started as a team. Like complementing cogs and gears, we built a head of steam. The tragic flaw, a charming man's exactly as it seems. Too much grease can break down a machine. Pour another round on me. Pour another round on me. You know I'm good for it. You know me. You know I'm good for it. You know my family. I am the lover lady who sees just what you dream. I know you're going crazy, living with him and without me. You trust me, don't you, baby? Yeah, you'd hand your life to me. Let's leave this life tonight and race the sunrise down the highway. A smile safe crackers understand is rendering this steady hand obsolete. The charm and confidence of men can jam the bullets in your gun and stop heartbeats.
Andy, how you doing?
I'm well, yourself?
I'm okay, yeah, I'm good. It's fucking cold out there, man.
Yeah, winter has started now officially. We've had like luxurious Indian summer this whole fall tour we've had, and then I think the last few days leave it to the United Kingdom and England and Scotland to really bring it to us with the winter.
So I did some research because that's the kind of guy I am. I like to read shit. So yeah, man, James Hepburn.
Yeah, the fourth Earl of Bath.
Yeah,
my ancestor.
Interesting thing. I did my degree in Scottish literature.
Oh, really?
And I read the casket letters.
Yeah.
And I did a couple of like papers on the casket letters.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
man.
Crazy. That's fantastic, man. Man, what a small world.
Yeah. So that whole shit, man, is. I don't know where to start. You've read them, I presume, yeah.
Parts and pieces, yeah, for sure. And like when I was working, because I made an album about like James Hepburn and Mary. And so I did a lot of like kind of like peripheral research, and then also just did a lot of just fictionalizing on my own. But it's really funny because there's like I'm part of this like I'm probably the only like one of the only people in America that really gives a shit about that part of history. There's like this I'm on this like Yahoo like news group like feed that I've been on for years, and it's just about James Hepburn. And it's the funniest thing too, because I think it's just me and like a bunch of like 70-year-old ladies like and I don't ever post, but they always just anytime new information comes to highlight or new articles are written or things that featuring James Hepburn come in, it's basically like a James Hepburn fan club that I'm part of, and it's like me and probably a bunch of old like Scottish expats living in America. Like that's about it. Yeah, that's hysterical, man. What a small world.
It's It's also interesting that you mention it because obviously Mary, she blew up Lord Darnley.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, is this the first time you've been in Glasgow? Second time?
First time in Glasgow. Yeah. We passed through it on the way to Edinburgh when I was here years ago. But this is only my second time in Scotland, and I haven't been here in years as well too.
So interesting thing. The oldest house in Scotland was built in 1471, and that's where Lord Darnley stayed before he went to Edinburgh, before he got blown up.
Yeah.
And it's just up the road, man.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. Yeah. Man, I might have to get up early and go see. We were staying like around the corner, like about a mile away or something. I was gonna get up early, and assuming I don't drink too much whiskey tonight, I'm gonna try to get up early and do some walking around, because I get super kind of nerdy and emotional about being here in a weird way. And like, yeah, when we were here the first time I came through. Years and years ago, like I fell asleep in the car and I woke up, and it was like I didn't even know where I was, but I woke up and I was like, yep, this is Scotland. Like I just knew, because we were coming from Manchester, I think, going to Edinburgh, and like I woke up and just like the countryside on the road between Glasgow and Edinburgh, and just like got all teary-eyed, and I was like, the motherland, like just, yeah. So I'm super excited to go kind of bounce around a bit.
Yeah, it isn't that far away from where we are just now, and there is furniture in that house which is older than your whole country.
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing, man. That's great. God, that's awesome.
Yeah, so like you should totally go there, man. It's a very small house. I mean, it's not made for tall people. I think they must have been tiny back then.
Yeah. Everyone was so much smaller back then. You see all the beds and everything. What's the name of the house?
It is called the oldest house in Glasgow. Yeah.
Oldest house in Glasgow. How would we ever know?
It used to be the Provence house. And the Province was like one of the lords of Glasgow, I guess you could say. But yeah, it's interesting, man. I only been recently as well. Like I've lived in Glasgow my whole life, and my girlfriend took me there, and she was like, "You need to go, man." I was like, "Yeah, okay."
All right, that's awesome. Yeah, being a tourist in your own town.
So, what was? I guess I should ask you because I fucking love this shit.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Why? What made you look into it?
Well, it's sort of a funny, long story. So it's gonna take a long way to get here. My grandfather, my father's father, was so after World War II, he was discharged out of the Air Force. He was flew bomber planes in Europe and then flew surveillance missions over Cuba looking for German submarines. After it was done, he was sort of looking for a job, and a friend of his was like, "Hey, I've got this government agency that is just starting up. I think you'd be perfect for it." And it was this tiny little infancy of its era, and it was just a little trailer that was behind the Treasury Building in Washington D.C., and it became the CIA. So he was one of the first people employed by the CIA, and worked at the CIA all the way up to his life. And he worked his way up the ladder and was appointed the London bureau chief of the CIA. And just before he could move, he had a small heart attack. And this is at the height of the Cold War. And the London bureau was one of the 3 most important positions of the CIA. He had a really small heart attack, but the instability of his heart, they couldn't have him in a position so important. And so he was sort of forced into early retirement, which kind of broke his heart. Because this was his life's work, essentially. And him being a CIA spook forever, no longer able to investigate a thing, he had to investigate something. So he investigated my family's entire genealogy. And there's a suitcase in my parents' closet that's got all these photographs and daguerreotypes and tintypes and a beautiful family tree that traces it all the way from my father all the way back to Scotland. And I remember seeing that when I was a little kid, my father showing that to me. And just thinking, when my grandfather passed, it was given to my father. And him showing it to me when my grandpa died, and I was probably 10 or something, 10 or 11. And I just remember thinking that was the coolest thing in the world. I've always liked history. But then this awareness of my own personal history and the fact that it is a really cool part of history too. That's a real bonus as well. And so as a result, I just kind of have always been super obsessed with it and kind of dug more and more into it. And, so it's just kind of always been there for me. Yeah,
I mean, I guess that some of the things that I've listened to, obviously, I've listened to your records. That's why I'm here. That kind of, I suppose, that feeds into the historical sort of fiction aspect of what you do. And was that? I guess that was a conscious decision at some point to make that choice to do that.
Yeah, I mean, at the time when I started making records, it was sort of a heyday for American indie rap music and kind of avant-garde, kind of creative, artsy rap music. And a lot of it, and a lot of musicians that I admire, and I don't mean this, what I'm about to say, in a negative sense, but all the music that was sort of coming out was sort of white kids who went to art school who were making weird rap music about their feelings. And I loved that music, but I also sort of just felt like I don't want to add another one of those to the stream. And so I started to kind of think of other ways to sort of think about it, and going sort of the historical fiction kind of route seemed way more interesting to me. I come from a kind of a long line of storytellers and bullshitters, and we're all sort of super obsessed with history, and it seemed like a really a much more interesting and engaging way, and something that I don't think anybody had done at that point in time. And so for me, it just felt like a way that I could sort of indirectly, I could choose pieces of history to talk about things that are actually reflections of myself, my own feelings, my own kind of emotions and curiosities or whatever, but without directly talking about myself. And so, it was basically became this sort of thing, making a reading list, essentially, is what it was. It was this is the piece of history that I'm super interested in right now, and kind of going from there. And so that sort of kind of built out of that, for sure.
Like, one of the things that I studied when I was doing literature is, well, the Scots have got quite a rich oral history, and it does strike me as being quite similar in a lot of rap music, but obviously quite in particular yours. Do you see yourself as being like kind of part of that lineage, I guess, of like oral storytellers?
Absolutely. And it's I think, man, my father is a fantastic storyteller, like fantastic. And his two best friends, these twin brothers that he met in the Army, Donald and David Bedwell, are fantastic storytellers. My uncle Ronnie is a fantastic storyteller. And it also helps that they've all lived like really hilarious, interesting lives. And from what I understand, I didn't know my father's father very well, and my father didn't know him very well at all. He was kind of a distant man to his family. But for his friends, apparently, he was very charming and a fantastic storyteller. And that I have like a... that's about as far back as I can trace it. But I remember very clearly when I was younger, we would be like at a family barbecue or whatever, and at the end of the night, sitting around a fire, and everyone just kind of feeding drinks to my dad and being like, tell that Slide for Life story again or whatever. And like, it was a constant, and that was a thing that like I admired growing up, and I kind of always sort of latched on to. I was really shy when I was a kid, but then sort of this method kind of pulled me out of that a bit. And as I got older, I started to kind of research more and more and understand more about that. I did, start to feel kind of like part of the bigger picture in a way. And I feel like that's, I guess, ultimately, hopefully my legacy. Like that's the thing you kind of start to strive for as you get a little older. You start to think about long term, and seeing kind of down the hallway all the way. And so, I think that I do feel a kinship for that for sure.
Is that one of the reasons why hip hop was like an outlet for that?
I think so. The stuff that drew me to hip hop, I certainly didn't know that when I started to listen to rap music. But the stuff that drew me to rap music initially was like the New York underground rap scene, and particularly Lord Finesse and Big L. And those two dudes are storytellers completely. And I always really, really loved that. And then, since like then I went on to learn about Slick Rick, who's this king of storytelling, and then fell in love with like dudes like Ghostface, same reason. And I think like at the time, the rap music that was being played on the radio was it was just stupid. It was dumb pop, post MC Hammer kind of thing. But there was this whole kind of like wonderful New York underground scene with like Native Tongues and De La Soul and stuff like that, and then DITC that, man, I really, really loved. And particularly the way Lord Finesse and Big L told stories was super, like that hooked me completely. And it was, Lord Finesse is super funny. He's a really funny guy, and both him and Big L are really funny, like kind of witty, clever people, but ultimately they're always sort of telling a story, whether that story is an actual linear story or this story about this fictional character of themselves that kills everybody and has sex with every woman. Like, but to me, that was, I think, the thing that probably totally engaged me. I'm totally unaware of that at the time, but I think, ultimately, and then eventually, as I kind of moved further on and learned more about rap music and more about music in general, and started to kind of really fall in love with people like Bob Dylan and Woody Guthrie, and learning sort of the history of blues music and the talking blues, and trying to tie those things together. I think my early records are super heavily influenced by people like Woody Guthrie and talking blues, trying to find the through line between talking blues and rap music, it's for sure. I think it's a storyteller's medium, I think, if used properly.
To tie both those things together, can you remember when, like, the first time that you realised that when you heard the first song you heard, basically kind of went, holy shit, like this is the medium that I'm going to use to tell my story?
Man, it's sort of a weird thing. I didn't think about, for the longest time, I came up in rap music through battling, and so I didn't think about it. Battling is not really like, and rappers will crucify me for this, but battling's not art. It's a craft, it's a skill, it's a sport, It's not about being creative or pushing a boundary. It's about making fun of someone. It's about being precise at a thing and being good at a thing and being better than someone at a thing. And so for me, like, I was going to school for theater, but I was battling, and it was sort of like two totally different things. And I was like studying super avant-garde theater, but then when I would battle, it was this like weapon, And it was a while before I started to like let all of my like art knowledge and theater training kind of bleed into my music. And I think if I were to like pinpoint it, man, I couldn't say the song that I heard that made me really think that way. Let me try to think. maybe I could think about it. The first time I heard like a story that sort of changed the way I thought. I'd have to really think about that. I know that there was a song that I made. I can't remember even what it's called. I made this song that was really funny. I didn't realize at the time too. Like I hadn't ever heard Space Oddity before, but I made this song about this guy being stranded in space or whatever. Like I don't know, like a month after I made it, someone was like, "Oh, it's just like Space Oddity." And I was like, "What?" Like, shit. But I remember making that. It's on an EP that like I made like 50 copies of it. I'm gonna re-release one day, like proper. But yeah, I think that was probably the first time I wrote like a real story, like linear story thing, and that was the first time that I felt like I succeeded at it. Like it felt like I can do this now, and so I definitely kind of latched onto it there, I think.
Because you've been quite well known for being a really good storyteller and also freestyler. And you know what, man? Like I've never seen anything like that in this city before. Like and obviously I've never seen you live before. But it's interesting you brought up the theatre thing, because I did when I was doing my research, I did see that you'd said in the past that you'd done theatre. I guess you're telling a story by doing that as well. Does that influence the way that you perform on stage? I say that having not seen you before.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I went and I was studying to be a director and a lighting designer, and so yeah, there is an element of my performance that is super influenced by that. And I mean, you'll see it's pretty kind of over the top a lot of times and pretty theatrical. In a way, it's definitely not like, a Lady Gaga stage show or anything, but I think there's a sort of like element of like, I am playing a character on stage that is, me, but it's just me sort of like elevated, like sort of the volume turned up on me. And so there is a degree of like playing a character and playing a role. And then also just the idea of like, there's a lot of things that I'm just aware of on how to be entertaining. And like I want to be entertaining always. Yeah.
You want people to come. You want people to walk away going, "Fuck, that was really good." Like,
yeah. I want people to have fun too. Like more than anything, like I want people to have a good time. Like I think of the live show and the album as two very different things. And the albums I always want, you put your headphones on, I want you to really focus on and listen to the lyrics and the liner notes, read everything. And then with the show, like it should be a fucking party. Like it should be loud and it should be sweaty and you should dance. And like and especially the older I get too, the more I really have grown to love. I've sort of pushed both my music and my live show more and more and more to be louder and faster and more like kind of outrageous, because I really like, throwing that party, but I also like attending that party, because the shows that I've gone to over my life that I really love are always like that, whether they're punk shows or rap shows or whatever. Like the shows that I'm always like, oh, that was the best show. Most of those shows that are in my like top 10 to 20 shows were all like totally nuts, like parties and kind of sweat fests. So that's what I aim for that.
I am a punk kid, but like some of the best shows I've been to have been like hip hop shows. Like they've been some of the most like raucous shit that I've ever seen. I seen Atmosphere across the road in the garage, and it was just like, holy fuck! Like I can't think of any punk band that could do something like that, which is weird because I fucking love playing punk bands. I can't imagine that. Like,
I think that both of those communities, there's a reason that they sort of periodically overlap throughout history and music or whatever. But like I think both of those communities do have a sort of need. Rap is like so rooted in a party. Like it's, even rap like that is not necessarily about the party, something like Atmosphere or whatever, we're still kind of rooted in the party. Like that's still always in our bones a bit. Like, and then even, but there's also this element of like anger and, angry energy. I think that like that is, man, so akin to what drives a really awesome punk show. Like there is a bit of a party in the punk show, and yeah, I mean, like I've seen Against Me a bajillion friggin' times growing up in Florida, and like those shows are like, yeah, there's sort of like, I think if you couldn't see the, if you took away sort of the demography of the crowd or whatever, the energy is pretty much the same as a really great rap show too.
The Florida thing was something I'd been thinking about, but I don't have a question about it. But now that you've said it, I kind of need to ask, like. So obviously you moved, like you've moved around. So now you're in Minneapolis, which I hear is, I fucking love Prince. I'd love to go to Minneapolis someday.
Great music city, man.
But forgive my ignorance here, but were you doing the hip hop thing before you moved to Minneapolis, or was that one of the reasons why you moved there? Or
That's one of the reasons why I moved there. I've been rapping for I started when I was 13. I'm 33. And so yeah,
I'm 30. I'm not fucking doing anything in my life.
You're doing that? Yeah, it's all right. You're up here. You got a free beer. So I've been rapping for 20 years. I started touring right after I graduated university, and that was in 2003. And been touring pretty much nonstop since. I went to University of Texas in Texas, and then after I graduated and we went on tour, I moved back to my parents' house in Florida and stayed there for a few years, maybe 5 or something like that, and then moved to Seattle chasing a girl, and that didn't pan out, and I stayed there out of spite for a couple of years, and then I moved to Minneapolis. Like after I was kind of like done with my time in Seattle, I was just sort of looking around places to go, and I had been going to Minneapolis all the time to work on music with my friend POS. And sort of that scene out there, it's just such a fantastic city for rap music, particularly the kind of rap music that I make. And I was just like, had been going there a bunch, and it was just like, this is stupid. Like, why am I buying plane tickets? I should just be paying rent there. And so I moved there, and that was 4 years ago. And man, I love it. It's one of my favorite places on earth.
I love POS, man. I seen them supporting the Bouncing Souls here. And
nice. That's shit.
It was weird because the crowd were like, what the fuck is going on? And I was just kind of like, man, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I forgot that he came over here with them. That's the shit, man. Steph is, man, he's one of the best.
I'd love to talk to him. He was on Scroobius Pip's show recently, which is awesome, man.
Yeah. I think if he's in Glasgow, he would be happy to talk to you. He's generally very accommodating with that sort of thing.
So one thing that I have been thinking about is your lyrics are quite literary. I mean that as a literature student, I mean that in a good way. You tend to play quite a lot of assonance and constants, and also like different rhyme schemes, which are more than just A B A rhymes. I'm pretty sure I've seen some iambic pentameter in there, among other things. I guess you must read a lot then.
Not as much as I used to, but like when I was in the theater program I went to is in Dallas, Texas. Is a school called Southern Methodist University, and it was, man, one of the best things that ever happened to me going there. It's a liberal arts program, so you like studying theater like nonstop, super like kind of intense 4-year program, but then you also have to take like non-theater classes. And the two most important things that happened to me while I was there was my third year. The third year of the program is when you study Shakespeare and Chekhov and Beckett. Those are the three in this like one of your classes. And my teacher is a wonderful woman, Barbara. God, I can't remember her last name. I feel terrible about that. She blew my mind one day, and I'd always loved Shakespeare. I'd always really liked it. But then the day that she taught me about like the coding in his scansion, where if you like we took like the first 10 lines of the to be or not to be speech, and if you go and you break down the scansion and all of it, and Shakespeare's iambic pentameter, but he breaks the rules constantly. And if you go through those first 10 lines and you circle where he breaks the rules, where he inverts the stress on stress, or whether he adds an extra syllable at the end, if you just circle the words where he breaks the rules and you just read those words in order, it literally reads like a perfect summary of those 10 lines. And you can do this to everything he's ever written. This like, man, blows the doors off of like the Shakespeare wasn't a real person myth. It's fucking, if you want to get me angry as fuck, I'll yell about that all day. But like I saw that and to see that, like I was like I grew up and I love like the beats and all those people, and as second I learned that, I would just like middle fingers up for so many lazy writers. Like I got so over like free poetry, and fucking the Beat Generation just bored me to tears after that point, because I saw not only was it something that was emotionally connected, but there was like a real craft there. And I have an admiration for craft and art, and if you can find a way to combine the two. The other one is I took an intro to poetry class or whatever, and the professor taught, there's a bunch of stuff in there. It's, sort of a survey class. But there's one poem in particular, this guy named Gerard Manley Hopkins, who was an old Jesuit priest, and he was writing, he lived in isolation, and he wrote all these poems that like no one read, and for 100 years after he died or whatever. And he was doing stuff with rhyme scheme and structure that no one was doing for like another 200 years after him. And this poem in particular, called The Wind Hover, is just one of the most incredible, like beautiful arrangements of words. And that, like, seeing those two things really like instantly changed the way I thought about writing. It changed the way I wrote. And like really kind of just blew my mind wide open and was such a thrill. And I've never sort of recovered from that. Like I just will always sort of admire people that put work in, and I do try to put a lot of work into that sort of thing, I guess.
Do you approach your lyrics like poetry? Because it strikes me as being quite difficult to put any kind of poetry to a beat.
No, I mean, not really. Like I think when I first started, and ultimately I didn't make very good music. I think the problem that a lot of people who try to put poetry to a beat, like they don't make very good music. I think like Saul Williams is a super talented writer, and while he has made some good music, I think his music always is sometimes lacking a lot of things because I think he's kind of putting a square peg in a round hole. He's such a brilliant writer. Like his writing is incredible, but his music, it kind of misses a lot of times. And I think for that reason, and I think a lot of people, I remember really early on, the first dude I ever worked on music with, this guy, DJ Reraj from Dallas, Texas. One of the first things he ever said to me when I was the first music I ever made, and he was like, you need to write this to the beat. You can't write this and then try to put it on the beat. It just sounds bad. And I remember thinking about that, and that's sort of a thing. It's always sort of stuck in the back of my mind. Like, and there was this, there's a moment where you start to, like, when you're stuck with a choice lyrically, you always have to generally side on the side of does it sound good? Like, you have to side on the side of making it a good song. So sometimes you have so much that you want to say, but sometimes you just can't do it. Because if you want to say that much, then write a fucking book. Like, instead you're writing songs, and so ultimately you have to choose when you're stuck, you have to choose the path that makes a better song. And so, for as much as like I was influenced by poetry, and initially, it has very little play in my life now creatively.
But you can't, for me anyway, for someone that's done literature, you can see that the genesis of a lot of your rhymes as being that kind of almost poetic in nature, which is not as common in hip hop as you might think to have that, in my opinion anyway. I've also, like, I'm in bands and I do write, and I've been told off so many times by saying, there's far too many words there, man. You gotta fucking cut that shit out.
No, sometimes it's hard to do. It took me a long time to be able to cut it out, and like that's why if you listen to my records, you'll notice the density of words is reducing each record. Like, it's becoming much more simple and simple and simple, and that's like a sort of an admiration. I was like, we were just listening to Yoni Wolf has a podcast, and he was interviewing Soul, two fantastic, humongous influences on my music. Y and Soul were fantastic, huge things for me, those records. And Soul was talking about, like, when his first stuff came out, it's so much words, so dense. And he made this great point, which is a thing that I had learned over time too. I grew up admiring those guys who were just tons of words. And he was just like, at the end of the day, I started to think, like, I'm like, saying 1,000 friggin' words, and I'm running it through a delay and distortion, and I'm like, no one can understand what the fuck I'm saying, so why the fuck am I writing all these words anyway? And that's what, like, was the impetus for him to start slowing it down and putting more space and room in it. And it's been really interesting because a lot of my friends, POS is the same thing. Like, all of us have, like, in the last few years, and I think honestly a lot of it's, almost all of us will credit, like, listening to pop rap, listening to people like Rick Ross or Gucci Mane or whatever, and like the space in their lyrics ultimately allows everybody to understand it. Whereas when we first started making rap, it was all about this, like, precision, density of thing, and ultimately made sort of a coded language that only rap people could listen to. And now it's like we want people to hear the lyrics, and so you can see all of us, like, putting space in things and cutting words out and simplifying. And I've become sort of really fascinated by sort of trying to write elegantly, to try to to use it quite well. And like people like a musician like Bill Callahan is a huge influence on me lyrically, and I've always been super amazed by how, what he can do with 5 words. And that's just like been sort of, I think, the goal for the last few years, is slowly working towards, like, figuring out a way to do it and do it with less.
I was going to say that it's like the art of becoming succinct, really. But another thing I was kind of wondering is it's also seems to me is like the art of becoming a better songwriter as time goes on. For sure. And like ultimately that's the thing is like you start to, like, it becomes really funny when you look at the lyrics for like your favorite, like, rock songs, like Beatles songs or whatever. Like the idea that, like, so many great rock songs
have one verse that they repeat 3 times, you know, with a chorus and a bridge, and like that's the song. And when you look at that and you're just like, you look at it like, you know, Chuck Berry or whatever, like, man, oh man, I've been on a huge Fats Domino kick, and his lyrics are just so simple and so basic, and it's basically like 2 sentences then the chorus, 2 sentences in the chorus, 2 sentences in the chorus, and you just go, what the hell am I writing all these damn words for? Like, ultimately, you know, like, you want people to sing along to it, you know, and like the fact that like someone can do that and still move you emotionally, you know, it doesn't always have to be, you know, you don't always have to be Tolkien or something, like, you know, like sometimes you can just write a damn haiku.
It's kind of like if you've got something deeper to say, write a fucking book.
Write a fucking book, man. Write a fucking book. Like, and if you can't express it, because songs don't necessarily always have to be, they don't have to be a billboard, you know, spelling it all out for you. Like, if you're doing your job, you don't just need the lyrics to do your job. The music should be doing the job too. And a lot of times, like, how many bands I love that I have no idea what they're saying. How many people are crying to Sigur Rós right now and have no fucking clue what they're saying, but are so moved by it, and it doesn't matter. Like, that to me was like oh yeah, cool. It's a weird realization for someone who's made their whole life on lyrics to be like, yeah, they don't really matter that much, but it sort of frees you up in a lot of ways, and that it's good, it's fun, it's a really enjoyable change and like kind of growth to go through.
So I guess that brings me to wonder, is that kind of like the vibe for whatever the new album's going to be? Is like it's going to be that kind of, that whole sort of idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I guess one of the things that's sort of really important to me for each record is I try really hard to change the language that I use for each record. And like records like Pomegranate are very, like, it's very formal and literary, and that's sort of the hardest thing to do, because I want to shake off, like, one of my biggest pet peeves with rappers is that they never change the way they use their voice, and they never change their sort of lexicon that they pull from linguistically. And they may be a super talented writer, but ultimately I get bored over the course of a couple albums. They'll put out one album and I go, that's great. And they'll put out a second album and it's like sort of the same vibe, even though the beats have changed or whatever, like, but it's still like ultimately you're sort of saying the same things in the same way and you're using voice the same way, and eventually I just get bored. And so I never wanted to do that. And so like not only do I try to like really push the way I use my voice in different directions, but I try to develop a new language for each one, which is a real pain in the ass when you start writing for a record, because you have to force yourself to not use the old record's language. So getting out, like, it took me forever to get the language for Pomegranate, and it took me even more time to get out of it, because it was so once you get it, then it's so easy to write in that formal style. And yeah, so this record is probably the most simple linguistically that I've ever written. The choruses are like, I kind of really took a lot of cues from like rap choruses. There's a lot of like one line repeated over and over again, whereas like my old choruses are like, The Case of William Smith is the craziest, most ridiculous amount of words in a chorus ever of all time. And so, you know, like this was like trying not to do that. Unfortunately, the guy that produces my records, John Congleton, he's really good about like when I tell him what I want to do, he'll like enforce it. He's like, remember, you don't want to do that. That's your old shit. Do something new. And he was really good about like kind of slapping my wrist when I would like kind of want to put a bunch of words in a thing, you know? So yeah, it's definitely much more slimmed down. It's probably kind of the most efficient record that I've ever done.
I just want to bring it up now. John Congleton, man, I'm so sad he's not doing the new Baroness records.
Oh,
like,
really?
He's not, but he did the Chelsea Wolf album, the new Chelsea, which is fucking heavy, man.
Yeah, man, have you heard and his, he did you listen to the Swans record that he did? No, you should listen to that. Swans, it's amazing. It's the record he did last year, and I think he's working on their new one too. Yeah, that's, man, if you like Baroness, like, man, listen to Swans. That'll blow your fucking mind. And it's a really rad record, and there's a really great story about, there's a horse sound on there, and them wanting to record the horse in studio. It's really funny. Like, I think he talks about it he did an interview on All Songs Considered on National Public Radio in America, and he talks about it on there. But if you like those records, then check out that Swans record that he did. It's their latest record. It's incredible.
So, talking about simplifying, I did notice the chorus in Psych was, you know, is quite simple. Super simple.
You know, it's funny is that song came about in the session. One of the guys that is a really amazing guy, Adam Pickrell, made the beat. But John brought him out just to play keys on stuff. And we were just, you know, you're there for like 4 days together, working together and hanging out and eating dinner. And he was just like, yeah, I got some beats. And I was like, well, let me hear some beats, man. And so he played me this beat, and it had like that like siren sound, that wah, 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 was just like the intro to a beat. And like that was starting. I was like, well, this is awesome. And then the beat went into a different direction. I was like, no. Okay, bring it back to that thing. Cool. All right, let's put some drums on. Let's put some bass on it. And so that song kind of bore out like kind of in real time. And I had all these verses for it, but I couldn't figure out a chorus. And that chorus was originally going to be a part of a verse. And John was like, cut that. Like that was just going to be 4 lines that were in a verse or whatever. And he was like, nah, that's your chorus now. Cut that. We're using it. It's not in that verse anymore. Take it out. And that was, it just came about like sort of really organically, which is, man, really fun. That was sort of a very intentional, like in the process of making this record was really about like taking as many steps to not think about things too long. Because when I think about things too long, I have a tendency to put a lot of words into things. And so ultimately it would just be like, John, is this done? And he'd be like, dude, it's done. Trust me. And I'm like, all right. Scared the fucking hell out of me. The first song on the record is probably the most simple chorus I've ever done in my entire life. And it scared the hell out of me when it was like, And now, like, I listen to it, I'm like, I'm really proud of it. But when we first made it, I was terrified. And John is really good about, like, having to be like, no, man, trust me. It's done. It's good. Leave it alone. It's fine. Which is a really helpful thing to have.
So I guess, just to kind of wrap up, what can we expect from the new record then, man? Like, I'm really interested, especially after Psych was not what I was expecting to hear at all, you know. And I'm like, one of the questions I had was like, I was going to ask you was, do you ever think you go back to doing traditional kind of more hip hop stuff? And then I heard Psych, and I was like, oh well, I don't need to ask that fucking question now.
It's definitely the most, like, I feel like in a lot of ways too, I feel like I've been sort of a rapper that's been making indie rock records for a really long time, and this is definitely the first like rap record I've ever made, and it has a lot to do with the fact that I'm like, I love rap music right now, like what's going on in rap music to me at every level. What's going on with indie rap music, what's going on with pop rap music, and gangster rap, it's Southern, and in Europe, like everybody's making interesting rap music. Man, oh man, like I feel like everyone's coming into their own at the time, and it's a super exciting time. So I'm like back in love with rap music, and so there's a lot of that in there. It's definitely the most like Southern record I've ever made. It's almost no live instruments. It's tons of like beats, and the only real live instruments that are on there other than a little bit of drums is a full brass band, like a New Orleans style brass band that's through everything. You hear them on Psych, that blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so like it's a lot of that. So it's like a lot of just like banging ass drums, like super heavy bass, and then brass band. I'm stoked on it. I'm really excited for people here. I think it's the best thing I've ever done by leaps and bounds. I'm pretty excited for it.
I'm excited to hear it as well, man. Andy, it's been a total pleasure. Is there anything else you want to say or anything you want to add before anything you want to ask me even before we finish?
Hey, man, give me your Scottish history literary list. Send me an email. I want to be part of your news group. Teach me these things.
Maybe I got to start a news group.
Yeah, exactly. Just I'll do a subscription service. It'll be great.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, man.
So there you have it. Really cool chat with a really awesome rapper. I really love talking to him. Not just because we had a massive history geek out, but just because he's such a laid back and interesting guy, really intelligent, really articulate, and he's just really easy going. It was really easy to chat to him, and I really enjoyed that. So thanks to him for talking to me. Thanks to tour manager Brock for sorting me out as well. It was a really awesome chat, and he put on a great show. Hopefully he'll come back soon and you guys can see him. He's got a new album coming out next year, and we've released a couple of songs from it. You should definitely check him out. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please drop me a rating and review on iTunes if you enjoyed this. I would really appreciate that. And I know this is a bit cheeky, but if you've got any feedback or anybody you'd like me to talk to, just go onto my website, thecuratorpodcast.com, and drop me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I do appreciate it when people talk to me. I'm going to play you out now with a track from the upcoming Astronautalis album, and this track, most traditional style of hip-hop track that I've heard Astronautalis do. So I hope you enjoy it. This song is fucking great. It's called Psych. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time, bye-bye.
I've been on some burn it down, leave this town, never look back shit. Passing out on your couch, sneaking out the back tip, whipping credit cards at your mailbox, snatch shit, charging to the gameplay, boy, it's practice.
What are we talking about? Practice? We're talking about practice, man.
They be on some got this, squat this, reroute the power grid. Cops can't stop this. Over our dead body, bitch. Eat this, drop this, turn it up, light a kid, put it down in our path. Million ways around this shit. Backstage, sterilizing tattoos with beer. Your cat stay paralyzed by bad news and fear. You're underage, ain't fucking let you in here. Fake IDG, you buy us all beer. I'm sick of kids who sit and bitch about to kick it into shit. Your woes me, Steve's just getting a bit ridiculous. Fucking A, you're underage, that means they just slap your wrist. If not, you're young and fit. Yeah, bitch, I run the pigs. And give them all trophies. And some orange slices. Yeah, y'all already know me. One of the only that's really grinding. Lazy motherfuckers won't call it luck. But real motherfuckers know there ain't no such thing. Cause I mean, there ain't no free lunch. You better fix your own plate to serve one to us. Don't pray to your God and complain on Facebook. Stay waiting for your dad to come save the day. Don't vote for Obama and expect the change is just one big party all giving the same gifts. Like a POS t-shirt. It's only gonna be worse. But this beat is kinda berserk. Turn it up louder till my fucking teeth hurt. Like a POS t-shirt. It's only gonna be worse. But this beat is kinda berserk. Turn it up louder till my fucking teeth hurt. Yeah, girl, I own some gold teeth. I southern, I was taught to hold heat. Ain't no gangster, tell that truth. Rick Ross, the cop with some bad tattoos. Hey, Florida, baby, yeah, my neck stay real red. Why you make believe pushing that white shit? You dress up gangsters, can play pretend. I stay slanging them white girls round my bed. Young Steve McQueen spit that dick game and tweet. Real bossy for a bitch with a 10 chain. I don't need no Maybach just to sharpen my pen. Game pull girls on my bike, ride my handlebars home, man. Ooh, and put my word on that, chief. Rihanna gonna holler way I murdered that beat. A kind of like an umbrella, King Kong in a bed sheets. Just find a better fella when you're done with that dead beat. Like a POS t-shirt. It only gonna be worse. Beat is kinda berserk. Turn it up louder till my fucking teeth hurt. See, I can write you dumb raps. Pay me and go buy some hubcaps. Fake G still talking about gun claps. It ain't gonna happen like A-Rod's comeback. Talent is cheap, money's all made up. Gallons of beam and the speakers stay based up. Fuck it, I got nothing left to say, son. Y'all get crifey. Thank you, bass god. Like a POS t-shirt. But it only gonna be worse. This beat is kinda berserk. Turn it up louder till my fucking teeth hurt. Like a POS t-shirt. But it only gonna be worse. And this beat is kinda berserk. Turn it up louder till my fucking teeth hurt.